All right, we'll call this meeting of the Finance Committee to order, 5:05 p.m. on the 27th of February, 2023. And I think our first order of business is minutes from the last meeting. And there's a link to those minutes in the agenda. Jen, thanks for getting the draft minutes up there from that November 7th meeting. Any questions or comments? No? Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve those minutes. Second by Chantal. All in favor? All right, perfect. Any public comment? I don't see anyone. So I guess we'll move on to the budget. And I guess we start with you, Michael, just overall, and then kind of move into some of the departments.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Michael Herbert, Town Manager. We're here to talk about the FY24 budget. Hard to believe that this is actually going to be the 10th budget I've put together. Wow, that's scary. Anyway, just so the order of the agenda tonight, and we're hoping you agree to that, is Brittany's going to actually start with a presentation on her financial trend monitoring system. So some of the indicators that we use to tell the overall financial health of the organization and those trends, review those. Then we'll go through just the general budget overviews. So we'll review the revenues as we currently have them projected, and then the overall expenses. And then from there, we will get into the departmental budgets. And I'm sure you have an order with which you would like to proceed with those. And then we will finish it off with just going over some of the other budget items as well and talk about those. And of course, anytime you have questions or comments, please feel free to interject, and we'll try to answer them the best we can. But for now, I'll turn it over to Brittany.
Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. So like Michael said, this trend report really assesses the financial condition of the town. I know a few of you have already seen this presentation. Those of you who have not, feel free to interject, ask questions. If you have seen it, if you have a new question, by all means, ask away. So we look at a number of indicators to really assess the condition of the town. So for purposes of this presentation, we're only going to look at a couple. The full report is included in the budget document every year. It's about a 45 page report, but we're just going to limit it to just a few of the indicators today. So the first one we'd like to take a look at is property tax revenues. So over the course of a 10-year period, we were doing pretty good property revenues have been adjusted for inflation. It's only been the last couple of years that we have not kept up with inflation, which, like I said previously, I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. Inflation rates have been obviously at some historic highs, and this trend hopefully will reverse, and we'll start to see these numbers go upwards in the years to come. Next slide is state aid. So the warning indicator for this slide is an increasing amount of intergovernmental revenues, also known as state aid, as a percentage of gross operating revenues. So you'll see that we had a favorable trend from FY14 to FY19, and then we jumped up a little bit for FY20, and that was due to a formula change in Chapter 70. So that kind of realigned our baseline, so I don't necessarily see that as a negative thing. 2023, and actually we just got the numbers out for 2024, and they are looking favorable for Ashland. So we don't rely on necessarily state aid. If we do have fluctuations in it, we do have a very healthy stabilization fund, and we do have a policy that calls on if it dips below a certain level that we will dip into our reserves to help offset any variances.
When you say favorable, here favorable is decreasing.
Favorable is technically decreasing, but because they did the formula change in 2020, it obviously we saw a spike. We benefited from that formula change.
I get that. I guess for 24, you said favorable. Favorable in terms of increased aid?
Increased aid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
we saw a little bit more. We're not sure yet if it's due to increased enrollment. We'll have to wait to hear from Jim to see, why it is we saw a jump there, but I'm assuming it's going to be from the increased enrollment at the school. Would be it's my guess, but that's Jim's wheelhouse. The next slide is economic growth revenues. So these revenues really fluctuate within the economy. These are our motor vehicle excise tax revenues, building permits, investment income, and a few others. So from 2014 to 2019, we saw a nice increase, and that was really due to the large developments that came into town. More recently, the RTD. And then once that development was complete, we saw a pretty big dip in building permits, motor vehicles, and then also due to COVID-19. And that lasted for a couple of years. Hopefully in 2024, more so in 2025, I think we'll start to see more of an uptick again in building permits and motor vehicle once we really get out of COVID, and some of the developments that are in the application process, planning process, will hopefully start to come online. So this slide just compares our property tax bill in 2023 to some surrounding towns. So we're at the bottom end of it. So we think that Ashland has good value for what we offer. So these are just the surrounding towns and that outer layer around Ashland. And just to compare it to, I think it's 6 years ago, we were in the middle of the pack, and we've actually gone down 2 spots. So we're doing pretty good there. Next slide is uncollected property taxes. Like I said at the last meeting, we have our treasurer collector does a great job collecting taxes and really staying on top of people to pay. Our uncollected rate is always at that just 1%, really. We saw a slight increase in uncollectibles during COVID, but we were able to catch back up. We really just saw a delayed impact there, but we were able to catch back up. That's why you see a slight increase in 2020 from 0.78% to 1%. And then we went right back down to where we normally are. And Cindy's doing a great job in collecting taxes for the town.
Now, Brittany, are these
Yep.
like ultimately uncollected, or are these ones that go into tax title?
It goes into tax title. So
Yeah.
these are really what was collected that levy year. So if we collected anything further on that levy, it won't be included in this chart.
Via tax title or anything
Right,
else?
right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Okay.
So it would probably, if I included that, we'd probably be in the 0.5, 0.4, maybe even lower than
Yeah,
that.
okay.
Yeah. So expenditures per capita, again, we took our expenditures and we compared it to surrounding towns, just around Ashland, and you can see that Ashland is at the lower end of that scale. And this is FY22 with the exception of Hudson, and I believe Dover only had FY21 available at the time. So if I had to guess, Ashland would be second to the bottom if we actually had Hudson's 22 numbers. So just for the heck of it, I threw in FY24 numbers in there from everyone's budget requests and compared it to everyone's 22 numbers, and we would have came up with 4,942, which still would have left us at the lower end of the pack if we're able to fund everyone's requests. So we're doing very well from expenditures per capita, almost too well.
Now, could you maybe just clarify what's in here? Is this general fund only? Is this all spending?
That's a good question. So this includes all, I'll say, foundation services for a town. So property taxes, which would include, public safety services, general government services such as, health services, development services like planning, accounting services. It also includes trash and other utilities, water, sewer. So it doesn't matter what mechanism those towns utilize to account for those fees. It's all included in this comparison.
Okay, so all-in cost, basically.
Right. Mm-hmm. So next is fringe benefits. So back in 2015, I believe it was effective 2016, 7/1/2015, which was fiscal year 16, the town switched to the GIC, and that really reset the baseline as well for health costs going to the GIC, and it saved the town millions of dollars. So probably from an accumulated standpoint from GIC, we've saved several millions of dollars over the course of the years. And just recently have our benefit ratio has gone up. But if you compare it back to, almost 10 years ago now, we're still doing fairly well. The GIC rates have been anywhere from between, one year we saw a 0% increase. I think our highest increase was last year was about 7%, and that's the highest it's ever been. Usually it's around the 4%, 3% range. They are coming out with rates on Thursday, so we will be on a lookout for that. So our next slide is our stabilization fund. This is a slide we're very proud of. The financial policies, which were implemented by all three boards back in, I want to say December of 2013, the school committee, finance committee, and the select board all signed off on it. And more importantly, we all adhere to the policy. And that's evident by the increase in our stabilization fund over the years. So in 2021 is when we started utilizing our stabilization money after a very long time of tapping into it, before this administration was here due to COVID-19 pandemic. So yes, we withdrew money from our stabilization fund, but we were able to put money back into it and then some. And this is our last year that we actually drew from the stabilization fund, and we do plan on putting more money back into it to make up for not only what we took out, but then, a little bit more than that too. So we're still above that 10% threshold. We met that 10% threshold per our financial policy back in 2018. 2017, we were just shy of meeting our goal. So we've been able to maintain our goal for the last, 5-6 years.
I'm just curious, like when you go through meetings with bond rating agencies and such, what are your discussions around, or what are their thoughts around this and how it figures into the town's rating?
So they love the fact that the town does have financial policies, but what they constantly tell us is that not only do we have them, but we actually follow through with them. Mm-hmm. I think that's what's most important, is that everyone can have a financial policy and have something in writing, but not everyone actually follows them. So they are happy to see it growing. They are happy to see that we're not relying on it, but we do have the funds available to tap into if we need to. So even though we did tap into it for COVID, we had a very laid out plan to utilize the funds and also restore the funds. Do you have any other questions? No? So debt service, this is actually a good indicator. This shows that we haven't really spent that much through debt service on capital projects over the years. It was around 7% back in 2014, and it's really hovered around that 6% mark over the last, 7-8 years or so. It's just recently we've seen an increase in our debt service numbers, just due to some of the larger projects that have come online. But we're still well below the 10% mark that's considered acceptable per bond rating agencies, and we're well below the 20% mark that's considered a real warning for the agencies. So when we're looking at capital projects and what to fund fund with cash, we do typically like to borrow the projects that will cost more necessarily, and they have a longer term. So you can borrow over a longer term. And then we also look at our debt schedule to see what's coming off of the debt schedule. So we might borrow something short term, pay interest only, and then once something falls off of our debt schedule, we'll actually go out and borrow permanently, and that's when we have principal and interest payments come on our debt schedule. So we're still at a AAA rating, and we're doing well here.
I mean, what does that look like going forward? 24 and beyond. Do you have that kind of mapped out?
I don't have it mapped out. I'm not sure what we're gonna be borrowing yet, if anything, for
Yeah.
'24 and beyond. So it all depends, since it's a percentage, this formula is a percentage of net operating revenues.
Yeah.
So if it stays constant, obviously, the percentage is gonna go down if we don't add anything else to it. And we don't, the only thing we have to borrow yet is I wanna say it's the ladder truck. And that's already been factored in, on the amortization schedule that I have. So if anything, it would go down if we didn't borrow anything. I don't know what's on the capital plan yet, the 5-year capital plan, if there's anything major that we can't fund via the 500,000 that's in the operating budget or through free cash, since we also try to fund a lot through free cash as well.
I think it's probably important just to mention for those who are listening, I think you mentioned before that this is debt within the levy,
Yes, it is.
right? So any
Yes.
excluded debt that's funded by overrides, debt overrides are separate from this.
Right, anything that's funded by a debt exclusion or the enterprise funds, the self-sustaining funds, those are not included in this graph.
Okay.
So next is OPEB, the other post-employment benefits. So this is health insurance costs for retirees. So we started back in 2014 or 13 with $0. And we have since increased our net position to just over $5 million at the end of 2022. And our ratio has steadily increased from 0% back in 15 to just shy of 8%. And we are continuing to fund the OPEB trust as well to potentially utilize in the future. And then this is another indicator that rating agencies look at as well, to see that you're actually funding it, you have a policy to fund it, and you're sticking with your plan, and you're not taking away from the funding to this unfunded liability. So that really concludes the presentation of the trend. So the full report will be available online. There's a bunch of other graphs, and there's narratives that go along with all the graphs to understand it a little bit better. So if anyone has any questions? No?
Nope, other than I think we'll just need that presentation for our minutes. But
Sure, yep. Leave it up. This one? Yeah.
So I promised Brittany I wouldn't interject during her presentation.
you were trying hard, I saw it.
There was a couple points. There were a couple points. I do just want to. I'm not going to go through the whole presentation again, of course, but a couple of things I did want to expand on. So a lot of people talk about OPEB and our liability, and they see that big figure, the total OPEB liability of like almost 63 million. And I think a lot of people have a misconception that a date is going to happen where we have to write a check for $63 million, and that's not the way OPEB works. What that is that that's your aggregated liability over a period of years. I think it's 22 years, based on expansion of healthcare costs, how many more retirees you would have on the system, and also how much longer they're expected to live. So all of that goes into that. We are generally very conservative with what is known as our discount rate, which is the rate at which our investments in the trust grow each year. I think we use 4%, Britt.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of communities use 7 or 8. If we use 7 it's as a paper exercise, we could just go ahead and use 7 or 8, and increase our funded ratio. It would more than double. It would put it close to 20%. But we're pretty conservative here. So I think that's just an important point. And then I just can't really add too much to what Brittany said, but just Obviously, you can't compare the budgets, the total budgets of these towns, because a town like Framingham or a city like Framingham is going to be a lot more than Ashland. But actually, a town like Sudbury, which is literally the exact same size, has a budget that's significantly more than Ashland as well. So breaking it down to expenditures per capita gives you a better apples-to-apples comparison. And while, it's great to be on the bottom because it shows our efficiency, it also shows how we underfund a lot of things over the years. So any questions after? Okay. Oh, boy. Okay, can everybody see this okay? No. No. Does that make it a little better? Okay. All right, so we'll go through the overall 2024 budget and just give you a bird's eye view of where things are right now. So first, our prior year levy, that comes from the previous year before debt excluded debt is tacked on. So, it's $51.5 million. Our 2.5 increase is projected to be almost 1.3 million, and new growth is scheduled at 500,000. This goes to some of those elastic revenues that Brittany had a slide about. That's really dependent upon the economic situation. Ashland has chosen for the last several years to take a slow or no growth approach to things. So you've seen the town buy up a lot of property that can be developed, a lot of acres. So it's been around 250 acres. We've spent over $10 million to do that. So there's an expenditure component to that, which has a budget impact, but then it also keeps that property from being developed again. And so the opportunity cost of getting revenue in through that is gone as well. I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing. I actually think it's good, but we are starting to see the impact of that with our new growth numbers going down lower and lower. So that's basically our taxes. So state aid is the big one. When we first started putting this together, we were looking at a significant deficit in the millions, and we were projecting state aid to go up 2%, 2.5%. So recently, the governor has released her local aid numbers, which included about $1.3 million more in Chapter 70 than what we were anticipating. So we've factored that in here. You see Chapter 70 going from 9.7 million over to 11.2. And overall, when you look at all state aid, you see that we're projecting to go up 13 to 13.4 million compared to 11.8. Local receipts have stayed pretty flat at 4.3 million. Just as a reminder, that does not include the meals tax revenue anymore, which is in its own special revenue account. You'll see that this year we do not plan on transferring any money from stabilization in. That goes to the approach that Brittany outlined in her presentation, which when the pandemic started, we agreed collectively, myself, Jim, FinCom, the Select Board, School Committee, that we would use a step-down approach to using stabilization funds to help balance the budget. And we went from 1.3 in the first year to 900,000 the second year and 450,000 this current fiscal year. And of course, we're projecting to go to zero. That's very important for the bond rating agencies as well. So that lowers the amount of total other funds that we're utilizing. All right, so here we go to expenses. So this includes all of our department's requests It includes a number that the superintendent had given us, but I am anticipating that that number might go up after this weekend's workshop that they plan on having. And I think that's going to be due, in fact, to this Chapter 70 number came in so much higher than what they had anticipated. But just looking at general government, we're projected to go up from almost 13 million to 15.2. So about 2.2 million. Public schools are going up from almost 38 to 39.6. Keefe Tech, we are expecting increased enrollment of Ashland students in Keefe Tech, and also their budget is going up. So we're anticipating that number to be at 1.35. Brittany reached out to Superintendent Evans. Have not heard back. Well, you did hear back. He just said it's going to be a while. Non-excluded debt service, which is something Brittany had covered under the trend monitoring system. Currently, we have $150K factored in for new borrowings. Capital outlay is at $500. Benefits and insurance is going up about $600,000. So total appropriated expenses is $77.6 million. And so, drum roll please, when you add in the appropriated expenses and you look at the unappropriated expenses and you subtract that from the revenue, we are currently at a $1.8 million deficit. So, which was a lot better than the $3.1 million deficit we had 5 days ago. So,
Just wait another 5 days, right?
just exactly. Any questions on the budget overview? Okay. All right. Jen, you got to look on.
Just to clarify, so that includes everything? I'm sorry. So just to clarify, that includes all the requests?
Yes, that number includes all the requests. So, okay. Well, with that being said, we can get into the departmental budgets. So who gets to go first? I think you might have Mina on first, but you know
Well,
what?
who wants to go home first? All right, Mina, you're up.
Was I the only one that raised my hand?
Yes.
Shoot, it's like, you know, when they all like stand and then everybody takes a step back, that was.
Right.
No,
It should be on that side.
Okay. There you go.
Thank you. All right. So I'm just going to start this. All right. So my name is Mina Jane. I'm the director of the Ashland Library, and thank you for having me here today. So this is just a little overview of where the library is and where we need to go. So as you probably have heard, we had an amazing 5-year strategic plan. We created it last year for the next 5 years. And our goals are being welcoming, more collaboration, more communication, working on infrastructure, technology, and outreach. Every 5 years this changes, but we found these kind of rose to the top for the next 5 years. And we're really, really passionate about this plan because I think it really covers a lot of the things that we want to do. So my budget request, it changed very frequently until I finally gave it to Brittany and she told me to stop. But basically, originally I had put in what I thought I could get. And then Michael actually said, you know, what do you need? And I said, this is what I need. This is kind of what would make our dreams come true at the library for us to continue doing what we want to do and providing the services the community really wants. So it's $88,000 for staffing, which really is in that infrastructure goal of ours to really make our library staff as fluid as it can be, because we have some great people, but we're kind of really working to the edge of our capacity. So we are expecting a retirement in our children's department, and we want to make that position an assistant director position, which of a community our size, our library is one of the very few that doesn't have an assistant director. And it would be really awesome because somebody to help with when I'm not there, somebody that staff can turn to, coverage, of course. We need more library assistants. We need somebody who can be on the circ desk, somebody who can be in the children's room. Our children's room is, both places are very active, but the children's room is just exploding with activity. And having another children's library assistant would really support that department greatly. We have some wonderful staff right now, and if we were able to get them all to, our part-time people up to 19 hours, and some of our people that are already benefited up to a certain number of hours that would be more beneficial to the library, then I really think that that would help us all across the board, keeping our stellar staff happy, being able to be at the desk as much as we need to be, and being able to do the next level things that we want to do. And then the Hail Mary one was the outreach marketing library assistant, because one of our goals is outreach, and we're really struggling with that because we need to be in the building, we need to be at the desks, we can't get out into the community as much as we would like. So we really stretch ourselves to get out at all. And having somebody who does that, plus the marketing, all of the stuff you see on social media, all of the pamphlets and brochures and things that tell people what we're doing. I feel like this is sort of a key position, so even though I didn't put it up on the priority list, I feel like it's something that I really, really need, and I think libraries in general need. And then we have our pages who are currently being paid $12 an hour, and we would like to bump that up to the state minimum wage of $15 an hour, just to, because we're awesome. And then we would like the increase to our materials budget because our digital content fee went up 30% from Minuteman, and our digital content use is up dramatically, during COVID, of course, but after COVID, people have been like, this is pretty good. I can just get this from home, and for free. We were just talking about this. So it's something that, Minuteman is trying to increase, so they increased the budget for that, and that hit all of the libraries pretty hard, although it's much needed. And we're getting some increased shipping costs from our vendors as well. So that's that. So this is what it would look like. This is what we have currently, 5.75 FTE, to where we would like it to be at 7.5 FTE. And as you can see, it really fills out every department in terms of getting the desk coverage, having people available to do that brainstorming and more creative work, I would say. Not creative, that's not the right word, but being able to do the kind of things that we really need to keep with pace with what the community wants and expects from libraries nowadays. The needs of the communities have changed, and we're trying to adapt because, COVID. So this is a lot of numbers. You don't have to look at all of them. I put in yellow what I really want you to pay attention to, which is Ashland and our budget over the last few years. This is how we compare our percentage of the town's budget. So as you can see in FY21, because those were the latest numbers I could get as a full picture, we were at 6.1%, then 6.4%. We're down to 0.57% of the town's budget. So even though more money is being spent in the town, the library continues to get less of it. And, to me, that's sad, but it's also, for me, I'm like, this staff is amazing. They're doing so much with so little, and every year get a little bit less. So, retaining that staff is really important. And we keep comparing ourselves to Hopkinton because it's sort of like the closest we are in terms of population and all of that. They're at 0.93% of their budget, the library. And that is partly because they had an addition, but we had an addition in 2005. So we're really very similar. Okay. And then this is just some FY22 stats that I got from the directors of these libraries. And what I really want to show here is that we're doing so much with 5.75 FTE. That number just keeps sticking in my head because we have all of these programs. We're doing a ton of circulation, which means a lot of people are walking in the door, or doing that download thing. So we had 50,000 people. That's where I got that number from Michael the other day. 50,000 people come to the library in person in FY22. That does not include those virtual downloads. It does not include the people who attended our virtual programs or watched them on YouTube afterwards. We have thousands of views on YouTube. So, this is an interesting thing. And somebody asked me, well, what about Dover? Why are they so, why do they have such great attendance? So we dug into this a little bit more, and we found that Dover does probably 70% of their programs are for children. And so they're not providing programs for adults, or not as much as we are. So I think that that is a really interesting thing, because we could throw so many programs at families in Ashland and people would come to them. But what these libraries aren't doing is supporting their adult programming. So these are our stats from FY21 to 23, and you can see we're just killing it. We're really, really happy with the number of programs, a lot of them which are recurring, which are run by staff members or identified community members who are really interested in those things like art, writing, card making, crafting, all of those things that bring people together. And the one thing I wanted to point out in this number is it seems like we're not getting a lot of attendance for the number of programs we're having. But again, when you have family programs, you're going to get a ton of people, families with 3, 4, 5 kids, what's going on in Ashland? you want to know. But for the adults, if you get an average of 12 to 15 people to a program, that's fabulous, because what you're doing is helping them connect with each other over common interests. And that's what we want. We don't need 100 or 200 people at a program. We want people to experience the library and each other in a way that they haven't maybe in the past. We do have programs where hundreds of people come. Some of them are virtual, but we just had one this last Saturday where 100 people came, adults. It was a hoot. We had so much fun. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But it didn't compare to the Pokemon Day that we had the week before where 200 people came. So we just can't compare to Pokemon. It's a truth. So these are the things that would happen if you were to invest in the library. And again, our percentage of the town's budget is so low that these are very, like this $80,000 or $90,000 is going to make a huge impact. And so, we would be able to do the things we want to do in terms of infrastructure. We want to make our collections welcoming to people. We want to be able to collaborate and communicate what we're doing. We want to get out into the community and be where people are. And the technology, we like technology. It's a thing. So we want to be able to teach classes. We want to show, like when people reserve our meeting rooms, we want to be able to show them how to use the technology so they can do their programs. So this is, sort of an overview of what we could do with just a teensy bit more in terms of staffing. And this is kind of what would happen if we have to really tighten our belts. And so this is kind of an overview, but I think if you look at it philosophically, is what do you want us to be doing at the library? What do you want from your library? Do you want us to be manning the desks all the time? I can man the desk. I love manning the desk. That's the only time I really get to see people other than programs. But is that what you want me spending my time doing? So that's what I have to do, because we don't have enough people to man the desks to welcome people and help them with their normal, regular services. So again, this is a philosophical question. What do you want me to be doing with my time? And what do you want our children's director to be doing with her time? Things like that. So I feel like there's a lot to lose to not be able to get some of these things. And because I don't like to leave on a bad note, this was the program we had on Saturday. It was a horror festival. I like to say that clearly. And afterwards, this was a tweet that somebody put out right afterwards saying how much fun it was, who knew it would be so much fun. And this is a piece of feedback I got from somebody from our feedback survey, which was, we had a lot of people there from Ashland, so that was wonderful. But this was somebody who I feel like really got what we were trying to do. And we had people from all over the state come to this program. So we are doing something that very, very few libraries are doing. We're focusing on the entire community. Oh, excuse me, I need a drink. Water, I mean. We're really focusing on the entire community. So, you know, that shows in our numbers, it shows in who's coming, it shows in our engagement, and it can only get better if we have the resources we need. Any questions?
When you spoke previously, you actually addressed, I think it was one of the bullets under infrastructure about safety. If you could just elaborate on that. There was something, if one person's at the deck, sometimes there's no one on the lower floor.
Yes.
So if you could just speak to that.
Thank you. When I first started here 2 years ago, there were many times that the staff had only 2 people in the building. It's a 25,000 square foot building. There's lots of little hidey holes. I just don't think that that's safe. A lot of times we have 3 people in the building, so that if something happens on one of the floors, at least there's a backup person. I personally think that 4 people on staff at any one time is probably the safest thing. So you have 2 people upstairs and 2 people downstairs. But I know that there's going to be times when it's going to be less. I think that we would have to close if we had less than 3 people, though. I think in this current climate and how libraries are being viewed right now, it just doesn't feel safe to be open with only 2 staff people in the building.
And this might be a question for Brittany, but I guess with all the budget requests that you're seeing for increased staffing, you know, you're talking about right now, probably just salary and basic benefits, but like health insurance and things like that. Is that built into your health insurance numbers, Brittany, for the increased kind of staffing from all the departments?
Yeah, it would be, so the 8% that we budgeted, it would include a contingency for any new hires or plan changes from staff.
So just to set another way, you know, the new hires that are built into the expense numbers, you also have the full benefit load, if you will, built in as well for potential new hires.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do have to say that none of the positions that we asked for require benefits, although they should get them. The people that we asked for extra hours already are benefited, and all of the staff that we want to bring in are 19 hours.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right, thank you so
Perfect.
much. I'm going home.
To have that drink of water.
Of water, exactly. I love the little pause there. That really worked for me.
I mean, we can go out of order here. Anyone have pressing business? Well, police is next on the agenda, so maybe we'll just go right down the agenda. And welcome to your first Finance Committee meeting, for Ashland at least.
Thank you. All right. So, let's see. Next, all right. So we did ask for an increase in staffing from 47 employees total, that's sworn in civilian, to 53.5. So this is with the addition of 4 fire department employees. We're combining dispatch for the first time. So they'll be coming from Keith's budget into mine. It also includes the addition of a deputy chief, which did not exist before my asking for it now, and a traffic officer, which would be an additional patrol position, and asking for animal control to go from a full and a part-time to 2 full-time. And we have, we definitely have the calls for service to legitimize that request. So this is just drawing from some area towns. The first number is the population, and the second is the amount of officers on staff. You look at somewhere like Millis, They have 8,000 residents. They have 20 police officers. That 22 includes me. It includes Lieutenant Briggs, so another member of the command staff. So, you know, boots on the ground answering calls for service. We have the same number as Millis, which is considerably smaller. You look at Southborough, considerably smaller. Different types of transient traffic come through here, you know, bordered by a big city. It's just very different. We're very much short-staffed right now, which is not that we're not budgeted. So appreciate the budgeting for currently 29, just not able to fill it at this time. So we answered roughly 12,500 calls for service last year. We don't have any full-time specialty positions, so all of our detective, school resource officer, court officer, they've been folded back into patrol. So they're sort of hybrid. So if someone wants a license to carry or an FID, I get complaints pretty regularly because both of the people trained to do that work midnights. So they're coming in on overtime or when they can. And, you know, that could be a liability. You know, people have, you know, they have a request for a license to carry. We are mandated to try and fill that. Our property room coordinator is a sergeant that works 3 to 11. You could imagine that the chain of custody issues that could come up with that if we had a, you know, a big case and we had, it's just, they're human beings, they're not always around, and with evidence, I don't have access to evidence. There's only one person who has access to evidence. Just, it's not ideal, to say the least. The reason why I asked for a traffic officer in addition, I'd like to have someone full-time assigned to traffic. Right now, and I have the stats, but I won't bore you with them, about 1,400 traffic stops last year without someone assigned full-time doing that. It still didn't make a dent in the complaints we get from neighborhoods on a daily basis. We somehow have managed to fulfill all the needs. We're asking a lot, you know, physically and emotionally of the officers we have on staff. With all the construction in town, we were begging them to work overtime in details to cover the traffic, wellness of police officers and public safety in general, and I'm sure Keith will speak to this as well. It's something we're talking about, you know, nationwide and internationally, and I don't think we're doing a great job here in town taking care of our employees on the police department for longevity. You know, I'd like to retain the good staff that we have. In order to hire and retain more staff, we have to be at least in the mid-range of salaries. We're not currently paying a competitive wage. I'm having a difficult time hiring. That along with civil service, but the request that I have in the additional increases are necessary. It's not gravy. It's to try and make some headway. I'm happy to answer any questions.
How many current openings do you have
We have,
that you're trying to fill?
so I have 2 people in the academy now,
Yep.
and I have one who's going to transfer from Springfield to us. That brings us to a total of 25. We just lost one. One of the officers that we had, pretty new officer, he was here just a year, and he went to Massport. They have a significantly higher salary and at the airport. So there's our struggle. So we're short, with what I've proposed, we're short 5.
Thank you.
Chief, you said our wages aren't competitive. What should the wages be in order to be competitive?
I mean, we're looking at a jump of, I mean, almost 10% to make us mid-range, 8 to 10.
Yeah, over a period of years. Catherine, do you have it?
Well, I have step 0 and step 1 just as a comparison.
Yeah. I'll reduce that. Just introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Catherine Bird, Human Resources Director. So I've done some comp analysis for the police department and other units within town because largely I've heard the theme of we're not paying our employees enough, so it makes it harder to recruit and retain our employees. So just to give you an idea, I did the comp analysis on all surrounding towns. So how do I say this? All the towns surrounding Ashland and then all those surrounding, yes, thank you. Two rings, yes, there you go. So just to give you an idea, step 0 is our academy rate. We're $2.50 per hour off the average. So that's just the average. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's about a $5,200 per year difference. And again, that is just the average. Step 1, that's out of the academy after 6 months or a year.
Well, for the academy is 6 months.
Okay, and so we're off about $1.71, and that's off the average. That equates to about a $3,500 per year difference, and those are just steps 0 and 1. And I could pull up the chart if you want more specifics, but it just shows you that we're off significantly. Thank you.
I mean, Chief, I guess, as far as the talent or the cadets or folks that are entering the profession, I guess, what are you seeing as far as those numbers? Meaning, is that pool that's going to go to police service lower than it has been in the past, and there's more competition for that pool of folks?
There's really no competition at this point. It took me, I mean, I'm just being honest. No one really wants to go into this line of work. It's thankless. I mean, I have 2 adult children, and they're both college grads working in the workforce, and one could work from home, and the one day a week she had to go in, she could bring her dog. The other one's living in New York City and making enough doing a couple of part-time gigs more than, these guys make risking their lives and dealing with, trauma daily. So we're not getting the amount of candidates, we're not able to retain because of many factors. Pay is just one of them,
Yeah.
But it is a big one. Although, yes, I do want to hire, and we have been able to hire 3. We just have to get them settled and in. But my bigger concern is retaining the really great employees we have now, because it is an employee's market. And it was almost to the point where I was going to call one of the area chiefs and say, do not poach from Ashland. Like, we're in the same boat. Don't. There was an employee that had a desire to work in another community, was going to get offered to a much larger, better paying community. And I had to unfortunately tell that person, I'm not going to sign off for the lateral transfer. I can't do it right now. I don't want to be that type of person. I always said I wouldn't be, but we're at critical mass now. I want to make this a place where that type of employee, who is one of our, rising stars, could be in this position one day if he so chooses. I want to be able to retain that person. I want to have a wage where they're not going to be looking outside of Ashland to work, because I think this town does have everything that an employee could want, if we can get the pay where, the men and women deserve to be at.
Gotcha.
Hi, do you mind clarifying, you said you don't have any specialty positions anymore, that they were rolled into patrol, the background of that, or what that means?
Sure.
Or how that happens?
So we had 2 full-time detectives, a full-time school resource officer, and a full-time court liaison, which Officer Ostreicher does all of our community service stuff as well. They're still doing those tasks, but they're coming in on their days off. So if your house got broken into, God forbid, you may be waiting till someone has a day off where they can come in and do a follow-up investigation. You're a victim of a credit card scam, where normally they'd start immediately, you know, doing what they need to do to try to get, you know, assistance to you through your credit agency or whatever, investigate it. They can't do that because they're out shagging calls on the street. It's not a good way to run a business at all. I consider this a, you know, several $million business that we're running. We just happen to be, our product is service to the community, and I don't think we're doing a fair job of that for the residents right now. We're managing and we're doing it, but it's taking a toll on the employees. We're asking them to work 16-hour days pretty regularly, you know, 3, 4, 5 times a week, forcing them to work. They don't know if they're going to go home. It's not good for their, you know, their personal relationships, their families. It's just a lot.
Can you speak to, you know, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? The desired, you know, staffing level for a town our size, I guess, as set forth by, you know, whomever, you know, nationally, kind of where should we be?
So right now, if we could get to the 30, that would be really good. And then we could grow from there. Say we wanted a full traffic unit. And, you know, I come from Natick, so that's what I'm sort of, my history and what I understand. We had a unit. We had a lieutenant that ran it, and then a sergeant, and then an officer. So you had 3 people that were doing, you know, the lieutenant might be writing grants while the sergeant is making the requests, and the officer was going and dragging out the trailers and setting them up, or running speed counts, or setting up, you know, tickers on the street to count cars. I mean, that's a pie-in-the-sky goal, but it's not unreasonable to think that we would get there, particularly the way that this town is trending. We're growing a lot, and, you know, I would like the department to keep pace with that. I think our population is going to be in the 20s, you know, before we really have a chance to even grasp that, but it's going to happen, and I'd like the department to grow with it. So eventually, I think we could sustain and have good, solid work for 35 employees, but, you know, I'd like to get to 30 by the, you know, the next couple years.
Good.
I have a really basic question, since I'm new to this group.
Nope, that's fine. Me too.
Who decides, like, the salary levels? Is that done at the town through HR, or how much input do you have into that? I'm trying to understand this process and how we got to where we are.
So that's a good question. So in the police department, we have non-union employees, or at-will employees, and that is set by the HR director and myself. And then we also have employees that are covered under a collective bargaining unit, and those salaries are established through the bargaining process.
Okay.
Just going back a couple questions ago, if you fill the open positions and as requested in the budget as is, does that allow the specialty positions to go back to their
Yes.
state regular job?
That will get us to a point where we can have two full-time detectives, a full-time school resource officer, and a full-time court liaison / community services officer.
If we're fully staffed, if all
Right.
those positions.
Right, yeah.
Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you. I did put together, just, these goals were set before I got here, but then what we've accomplished so far in the 7 months.
All right. I think we got fire department next. Chief? Doug's gonna be up all night anyway. He's got a
Just saying that.
All right, thank you. So I'll start off with an overview of the department. Maybe.
You think? All right, I'll fix it.
Try to get that. Touch me. There you go.
Yeah, see?
You get the touch. So to start off, current staffing of our department right now, in January, we hired our deputy, which we fought hard for over the last few years, and I thank you for your support in getting that position. It's Deputy Morahan, who's here with me tonight. We now have a full-time captain who's in charge of training and the maintenance and also does grant writing for us. The deputy has kept on the role of the fire prevention operations officer. So now we have 4 shifts, 6 members on each shift, to be a lieutenant and 5 firefighters. It's allowed us to get out there more in the community. Some of the photos there is the deputy out doing education inside the school. I do have the two stations that we currently run out of. As you know, we hope this year move into the public safety building. Hopefully within a month. Again, outreach at the Halloween parade, and then on the far right is some training we have to do with the, unfortunately, active shooting inside the schools with the police department. So looking at our calls, this is all based on the fiscal year. So fire department calls were 2,308 for 2021, and in 2022 we did 2,705. Structure fires are showing a little down in that period of time, but by the time the calendar year finished out, we averaged out. You'll see the medical responses have definitely jumped up. We did 1,498 in 2021. 2022, we did 1,861. And as you see, the transports below, so not all medical calls are transported. We do a lot of waivers, evaluating from car accidents and stuff like that. But we are definitely seeing an increase in transports. One of the other things we're seeing a big uptick is going to different hospitals. We're seeing a lot higher demand to go to Milford Hospital, Newton Wellesley Hospital, UMass. So that is actually straining our system a lot more, because with 6 guys on, when you lose 2 guys for an hour to 2 doing those transports, we're running low. Since we just finished off the calendar year, to give you some more numbers, our calendar year finished off with 2,747 calls. That was compared to 2,308 in 2021. The calls broke down to about 67.3% are EMS. You know, I hear a lot of people say, oh, fire, you're not doing as much, you're not doing as many fires. No, but we're definitely seeing a high uptick in EMS calls. During the year, people say, how busy are you? Well, we don't know when our calls are going to come in. So simultaneous calls, during 2022, we had 1,115 times. We had 2 calls going on at once. And then 287 times, we had 3 or more calls going on. So a lot of times, if we're down to 3 calls, that's going to be a mutual aid town coming in. I think when we went through the calendar year, we had 80 times a mutual aid town had to come in and handle a call for us because we were tied up somewhere else. So this first part is my personnel budget. So what I'm looking for this year is an increase of firefighters to be able to handle the calls. So we're looking to add 4 firefighters. That budget also shows a decrease of the dispatchers, so we are losing the dispatchers out of the budget, as the police chief referenced. But again, adding 4 firefighters. Why do we need those? We're seeing the increased calls. So right now, the national average recommendation is 1.6 to 2 firefighters per 1,000. Ashland's sitting at 1.5 right now, so we're just below it. Why do we have an increase of calls? We're not building a lot of houses, but we are building a lot of bigger developments. And just to give you an idea how that affects us, so 369 Pond Street, an assisted living facility, we did 183 calls there last year. 250 West Union, the nursing facility, we did 88 calls there. Cirrus Drive Apartments, 70 calls last year. In comparison to Joanne Drive, which has been around for a while, we did 54 calls there. So the buildings that we're building are bigger and they're generating a lot more call volume out of them. Second part of the budget is personal purchase of services. My major increases there are in the contracted services line item. That the real increase there is because our ambulance billing is percentage based. We're seeing more bills, more revenue, which is good, but it is increased costs for the billing. Fire equipment maintenance costs are going up. We're seeing a big uptick in the cost of getting trucks. With supply and demand, unfortunately, we're seeing the trucks, when we send them out for service, they're actually out for a week waiting to come back from a shop. EMS supplies, again, we're seeing increases as everybody is with costs of. And lastly, I have under my purchase of equipment, we have a $30,000 increase there, and that is more because I'm trying to get a grant, and we have to do a 10% match. So I'm working with Southborough Fire and Hopkins Fire and Ashland Fire to do a $1 million grant to replace all our air packs, which will all have to be replaced within the next 4 to 5 years. So if the thought is with FEMA, if you do grants with multiple towns, you have better luck at it, and we would hopefully have a good chance of getting it. So it's a good opportunity for the town to save a lot of money there. So that's really the 30,000 there. The budget does not have any safer monies. That all ended in the last fiscal year. And again, it uses 425 out of the ambulance revenue account. And just to give you numbers there, last year we collected about 142,000 in ambulance fees. Prior year we collected 720, so it was definitely a big increase in revenue collected there.
Keith, what was the first number? 142?
841.
800.
Yep. And that is it.
Questions?
So 5 new firefighters would result in how many per shift?
4 firefighters.
Four.
It would be one on
Four.
each shift.
One on each shift.
And that's why you do it in numbers of 4, so you can increase each shift. If you only did one firefighter now, you'd only increase a quarter of the time. And we never know when that.
So that would be 6 per shift then? Because you're at 5 now, or?
We're at 6 right now with the shift officer.
Okay.
Yeah, ultimately, I would love to see 8, so you'll have another truck staffed. But we went with 4 to start because.
Actually, that's a question. How many go out on a truck for a call? I mean, just basics here. We're talking how many people are on a shift, but I don't know.
Yep, so if it's a medical, usually depending on the type of medical, if it was severe medical, they're all going if they're there.
Okay.
Basic medical, we're gonna send 2 in the ambulance and 2 at another vehicle to go with them to assist them carrying out.
Okay.
So right now, if we send both ambulances out, which commonly happens,
Yep.
4 guys are out of town, leaving the town coverage with only 2. If you were going to a structure fire, the recommendation is having 4 on that one truck. 2 guys would not be able to go into interior to a fire to make an attack.
Right.
I guess, sorry, go ahead.
Do you have any open positions right now, or is everything filled?
So everything is filled. With the deputy, we
Yep.
moved all the promotions up. We moved Matt Boland to captain, Kyle Messinger to lieutenant, and then we just actually hired a resident from Ashland to replace the firefighter. So he just started a week ago.
And if you got what you're asking for, do you anticipate any issues with hiring? I'm wondering how that compares with police versus
Everybody
fire.
wants to work for the fire department.
Okay, no, sorry.
No, it's
I'm just trying to get a sense.
we're all seeing the struggles. Financial, when people come and interview now, they ask us for copies of contracts, they want to know how much you're gonna get paid. We've had people say, no, I'm going to another town.
Yeah, and where do
They
we
get
fit in?
multiple offers.
Okay.
You're not getting it's difficult to hire fully trained paramedics, so the one we just hired is in school. We're having pretty good luck. Ashland's actually well-staffed with paramedics. We were probably one of the first towns to go to that level. So everybody in our department is a paramedic except for 2, which is great.
And then just last question, like where do we stand compared to other towns around us with our salaries and wages? I'm just trying to understand by department, kind of where our issues are with that.
I'm actually not sure if we've had a recent study, so that would be hard to answer.
Okay. You would know if it was a major problem.
I'm gonna tell you, they're gonna tell me it's low, but I couldn't give you a number, right? I mean, right.
Right.
I don't want to throw a number and not have the data behind it.
Thank you.
So one more question, I guess, on those 4 positions, or maybe overall. You mentioned, seems like everyone is a paramedic. Do we hire EMTs as well? And are some of those going to be EMTs of those 4, or?
So ultimately, everything is ALS level of care, like Town of Holliston, we provide them mutual aid because they don't have any.
Yeah.
Plus you want to strive to move the younger guys up, because the older ones will probably eventually be moving off the ambulance.
Okay.
Otherwise, you'll eventually flip it over and you'll get to a point where the older ones leave and you don't have the paramedics. So you have to have the paramedics for the ALS license. ALS.
Advanced
Sorry,
life support?
Advanced life support.
Okay.
So you could do IVs,
Yeah.
we could do cardiac care, defibrillate.
Another somewhat basic question. If there's a call related to mental health, is that the police or fire department?
Usually both.
So we would go first and make sure that the scene is safe, and then include fire department if there's going to be transport.
So if anyone has to be transported to the hospital, they're required to go by ambulance.
Okay.
Years and years ago, they used to be able to put them in a cruiser and bring them, but you're not allowed anymore.
Have you seen increase in those types of calls?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Huge increase.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Hey, Ed. Good, how are you? My name's Doug Small, DPW Director. I don't know if we've ever met, so. Nice to meet you. And we met a couple years ago, I think. Hi, Jen. We should probably wait for them, you think? So the one big takeaway on this, the town of Ashland needs a Parks and Rec department. Okay? That's between us 4. Parks and Rec. We have a rec department now, but not park. So Kelly does a lot with the kids in the summer and actually throughout the whole year now. Yeah. Ed was just suggesting that we get a Parks and Rec department in town. It was out of the blue.
You started, you led with that?
Well, no, we were waiting for you. The camera's off. Right, Paul? What?
No, you're on the stream, Doug.
All right. All right. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. This report here originally included both the general fund and the enterprise funds for the DPW. So what I did, I went through and I eliminated most of the enterprise fund information in it. So I'm sure we're going to see some typos here and there, but I just wanted to focus today mainly on the general fund. Let's see. And by the way, Keith, that was a really good presentation. Probably would have been better off if you went last. So introductions. So these are the general. All right. Let me back up a little bit. We actually have 12 budgets that we manage at the DPW. So the general funds, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 general fund, the administration, highway, cemetery, parks and tree, facilities, the fuel account, snow and ice, and utilities like streetlights. Let's see, see, it didn't line up right. DPW responsibilities. So this is just a general description of our responsibilities at the DPW. It does include some of the water and sewer stuff in this, but roadway maintenance, the water infrastructure, the sewer infrastructure, grounds and parks, our 3 cemeteries, the high school, middle school, and Stone Park. And then natural resources, town forest, trails, trees, lakes, and streams. That has a lot to do with the NIPTES program. And so that's kind of a general description of what we do. General description of our functions. So we also have the rubbish and recycling program with waste management. The municipal facilities. Jen Ball and I work together overseeing that. With all the departments at Town Hall, Community Center, Library, DPW, et cetera, et cetera. And then emergency response, snow and ice, water leaks, flooding, sanitary sewer overflows, storm damage. The basic DPW functions for emergency responses. So currently, some of the important DPW projects to mention. Of course, we have the downtown project for the streetscape and undergrounding of the utilities. Pond Street, Route 126. Even though that's a state project, the town is very heavily involved in that. The streetlights, that's our portion of financially for that job, which is about $1.3 million. Let's see. Other projects intersect. So at the intersection of Route 135 and Fountain Street, the Fountain Street Bridge, that's something we've been, we'd like to address. We've addressed portions of it with the public safety building going in. We widened it, and so in case a fire truck or emergency vehicle needs to get by, so now there's 2 full lanes. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. As you notice when you drive through it, it's really rough and it's not good. But the problem is we can't go out and mill and pave it until we take care of the water, the utilities underneath. So it's a matter of figuring out how to fund it and how to attack it. And then it also involves the traffic lights, the crosswalk, the wheelchair ramps. And then if you're going to do that intersection, should we be doing the intersection on the other side of the bridge? Because both sets of traffic lights are temporary with the wood poles. So we were going to reuse the steel poles from downtown over there. Anyways, it's something on our wish list. Chestnut Street Sewer Pump Station, that one we will be upgrading that sewer pump station starting in the summer, which is great. That's our main sewer pump station for the town of Ashland. I think the 4 motors that are in it are probably the original motors and pumps from the 60s, I think. But anyway, so that's a big job for us that we're going after this summer. Corville Road Bridge, that one is still in the works with the state. I think that's about 2 years out, 2 or 3 years out from occurring. Then the Main Street Bridge, that one by Kitty Fenwall, or what is it called now? It's not Kitty Fenwall anymore. Yeah, so that bridge there, we're going to be rehabbing that bridge, hopefully within the next 2 years as well. Quiet Zone, which is actually, we're supposed to call that railroad crossing improvements. That one is also on the federal TIP program. Hopefully, that's going to occur within the next 2 years. And then the water treatment plant there. See, a lot of this stuff is the enterprise fund, unfortunately, but there's some big things going on over there. But the water treatment plant, the plant's over 20 years old. It needs a lot of upgrades. So we're chipping away at it right now. And we're going to continue to chip away at it every year. The good news is we've identified a lot of problems. So that's the good news, believe it or not. And that's the first step you have to take when it comes to fixing things. So we've identified it, and now we're chipping away at upgrading these things. So we can get another 20 years out of the water treatment plant, and the Chestnut Street pump station, then eventually the Ledgmere pump station, Prospect Street pump station, et cetera, et cetera. Roadway resurfacing, so last year we took care of the Main Street Hill portion of Winter Street, Olive Street, Fountain Street, Cross Street, and Oak Street, milling and resurfacing, basically. We didn't do the entire lengths only because limited funds, and also kind of got back into the water main issue. But those roads are much better than they were, especially Main Street Hill. That one's been an issue for a long time. So the sewer I&I program, that's an ongoing thing with the MWRA, and that's something where we go in, we investigate the sewer system, looking for leaks in the system, and remove them. We make the repairs to the manholes of the sewer pipes, and the more repairs we make, the less stormwater is actually going that we get billed for by Framingham or the MWRA. So it's an important ongoing project. So the dig safe, I wanted to mention the dig safes, the number of dig safes we have. I think we're averaging somewhere around 5, just over 5 per day. So that's quite a bit, and that's so over 5 per day. And so that involves at least 1 or 2 people to go out and mark out the water and sewer lines and the stormwater lines. So that kind of represents the amount of construction going on in the town of Ashland right now. And it's not something that takes 5 minutes either. So when you do lose that 1 person or 2 people, you're pretty much talking half the day, because they have to look up the plans, look up the maps, find the utilities, and anyway. So let's see. So DPW staffing. So on the staffing side, I eliminated the enterprise fund, the water, sewer, and the other ones. So basically, with highway cemetery facilities and the mechanic, we have 15 full-time employees. That doesn't include, like I said, water, sewer, et cetera. Really, overall, it's more like 30, 35, if you include everybody. So the org chart, I just wanted to make sure I showed this because how nice it came out with is that purple, like a light purple, turquoise, I don't know. Lilac. Perry, okay, see? And if anybody wants to learn how to do this, I can show you later sometime. That was with Word, by the way, Brittany, Word. All right, good. So this is the staff. So engineer and stormwater, we have Evan up there, a senior civil engineer. We have a vacancy right now with the civil engineer spot. Kevin Langmeyer, who's been a superstar the last couple of years with traffic, stormwater, working with Cara and the police department. And then we got a young Rokes over there too, which is awesome. Facilities, that's Jen and I against the world. I got Jeff, she has Marley. Fleet maintenance, so Jimmy Bomba's our foreman. And then, so Ian's underneath him, and I think we found somebody for the vacancy as a junior mechanic, which is great, hopefully. I'll get into the fleet later. Highway cemetery, these are the guys in the highway cemetery department. So basically on the right-hand side, those are the guys that take care of the cemeteries in the high school, middle school, Stone Park, and all sorts of other places around town, whether it's Corner Spot, the town forest, the islands around town. And it's a highly productive group, those 5 people. The highway side's different. It's a different game over there. It's more, based on the work orders that come in. But the group on the right, that's more like mass production as far as, especially when the grass is growing. But it's a good, overall, it's a very good crew. The workload indicator, this, I can send it to you later if you want to get into it. It just shows you some numbers of the different things we deal with. Let's see. Like I said, there's so much information in here. We could talk all night, and I don't want to do that to you. School dude request, that's part of facilities. So if you see there's that school dude underneath facilities. So they basically get 200 requests a year. Burials, that's a hard one to predict, but we're somewhere around 70 a year. Road opening permits, that's another one that's reflective of the amount of work around town. So we're somewhere around, let's see, FY22, 140 in FY22. And that could include like Eversource Gas, Eversource Electric, any of the utility companies, plus paving companies, things like that. Water and sewer department, snow and ice, salt usage. Let's see. So basically, the top lines under the snow and ice, so plowable snowstorms. We generally have 4 or 5 plowable snowstorms a year, where we're calling in the contracts. 10 years ago, the numbers was more like 6. So we are seeing the numbers go down so far this year. We've had 2 plowable, and it's hard to even call them plowable. They were such minor storms. I think the last one was 4 inches. So this one tomorrow should be number 3, but it's kind of 3 with a question mark or an asterisk. Let's see, water, that gets into water, wastewater. Michael, you want to add anything?
Nope, you're doing fine, Doug.
Thank you, sir.
You got the budget numbers up here?
Yep.
Okay.
Sorry. So budgets, this gets into the other towns, just compares the other towns, the 2 rings. Ashland, what's unique about Ashland is the amount of services the DPW provides compared to the other towns. I don't think they match us. The DPW actually provides more services between the water, sewer, highway, cemetery, rubbish recycling, stormwater, the billing, and then maintaining the fields, and then also throw in as far as booking the fields. So I don't think there's any other town around us that does that matches the amount of responsibilities that we have based on this study. So let me just to fast forward here. I want to get to so on the needs just for the general fund side, let's see. So DPW needs highway, cemetery, water and sewer at a minimum DPW. So the DPW office, that's someplace where we need help. There used to be a DPW office administrator years ago. That position was eliminated. So that's an area where we're weak. And then it kind of falls right into field rentals and schedule and billing, and then the Parks and Rec department, once again. So just a little more details on that. So the number one thing as far as highway, cemetery, water, and sewer, it's important. I think we need to continue to increase the contracted services, the funding for that. I don't think it's a matter of hiring more full-time employees. I think we need to rely more and more on outside help. Instead of, because every time you hire an employee, it's not that $40,000 or $50,000 a year. It's also now, this person's going to need a vehicle because they're not working in the building. So they need to be able to to get. So you're talking, $100,000 by the time it's said and done. So I personally believe that we need to rely more and more on contracted services, and we just don't have the room. We don't have the room for people. So and then number 2, the DPW office. Like I said, the DPW office is missing a key position. It is the DPW office manager. The DPW office also consists of 3 employees that could share the duties of the office manager. This would increase salaries of 2 of the employees by about $10,000, and the third one maybe about $15,000. So we have 3 longtime employees over there that have picked up the duties of the DPW office manager over the years, but it would be good to kind of get them where they should be. And then the field rentals, scheduling, billing, that's a big problem for us at the DPW. It kind of leads into someday the town creating a Parks and Rec department. I don't know of any other towns where the DPW is involved with field rentals and scheduling and billing. It just does not belong at the DPW period whatsoever. It's like, you know, the town built those fields. The town built, you know, the high school, 10 years ago was it, maybe, Mike?
High school field?
Yeah, the high school complex.
15 years ago? Before my time.
2012. I thought it was when it went online. But anyways, it's just, I wish there was some more thought that went into actually how we were going to manage it once the complex was built, and that has not come to fruition yet. We try. DPW operating budget. I'm sorry this is taking so long. So the bottom line is we're looking at a 14% increase on the general fund budgets. Overall, let's see. So this is admin. This goes back to the office manager position there. Looking for an increase of, I think, is $19,000 there for the bottom line. Let's see, fuel. Let's see what we're running into a lot down. We need to make some improvements to the actual fuel pumps themselves. So we need to increase that line item for the maintenance of the pumps and miscellaneous supplies. And then of course, the diesel prices, $5 a gallon right now is not helping anybody. Utility streetlights, this is another area where we run into requests every now and then for actual repairs to the streetlights. So I was looking to increase that budget also. Facilities, utility expenses, based on the existing where we are today, I put in an increase on that for the utility expenses, for the lights and things like that. Contracted services, this is a big increase for cleaning services with the public safety building going online soon. Let's see, what else do we have? So this one here is the highway department. So this one here is another one back to the contracted services. Looking to continue to keep the contracted service number a good, healthy number. So especially for tree work. So if we have to bring in a contractor to do tree work, it costs about $8,000 to $10,000 a day just to have them do it. And so you basically, $100,000 is good for 10 days worth of work. So, and then it's important that everybody realizes we're not going around just taking out trees because we want to take out trees. We only take out trees that are hazardous, that could cause harm to people and things like that. So it's a basic function of a DPW is you have to remove trees, that can cause harm. Let's see, sign supply, traffic, that's another, anyways, that's minor. Any other ones? Snow and ice is about the same. This is cemetery, parks, and trees. So basically, with the union agreements, the salaries will have to go up a little bit. So there's an increase there. Tools and hardware. That's a minor, a slight adjustment there based on existing now. The guys, like I said, that crew is a highly productive group, and the more we arm them with the right tools, the more they're going to get done for the town of Ashland. So then this just gets into the DPW fleet, all the different vehicles. I think we have about a $4 million worth of vehicles right now, the DPW that we maintain. It gets into the condition of these vehicles. So, okay, so the top, that's the administration, that's the highway department, these are basically pickup trucks or 3/4 ton trucks or 1 tons. They're all in very good shape. The small dump trucks, they're all in very good shape. Water and sewer, large 6-wheelers, that's in good shape. You know, that's a $200,000 truck right there that's in very good shape. So, last year, if you bought a truck, a sander or something, it would cost $200,000. Today, if you want to buy the same sander, it's $300,000. So maintaining our fleet is really important. So there's one that's fair, so that's a utility truck. That's a 1-ton. Let's see, sanders. These are the frontline defense for us for snow and ice. So overall, very good, very good, excellent, new. So there's one truck. Where is it? 20? 21 that is very poor. Yeah, that one's done. This is its last year. It won't pass inspection this summer. It's structurally, it's finished. So, and that should be it. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information, you know, and I don't mean to bore you, but it's, this is important stuff. I mean, if you like trucks and loaders, and, you know, this is fun stuff, so. Anyways, sidewalk machines, that's a very important one too. You know, with the new sidewalks going on Route 126, the new sidewalks downtown, so that's really important to make sure we keep the schools open by having the sidewalks cleared. And the sweeper, it's when they come in to maintain that sweeper, the vendor is just amazed that it's a 2004 sweepers. They normally have a shelf life of 10 or 12 years, and we keep ours going. But it's time. It's definitely time. So that's it.
Questions for Doug?
So the fleet is all part of the capital plan analysis, right? So
Yep.
sort of planning ahead for anything that needs to be replaced. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
I was curious, what is a SWAT truck? So I know SWAT as police, but
So it's a box truck that the water and sewer guys use for emergencies.
gotcha. Okay.
So they keep all, their compressor in there and their jackhammer and all the tools. And so it's a DPW's SWAT truck.
Okay.
And I'm not going to get into the last item. I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, Parks and Rec Department. But that's pretty much it. Michael?
Anybody have any questions?
I have one question. How would a park and recreation director help you and help the DPW? You mentioned it before. We talked about this last year, I recall.
Yeah, in two ways. One would be as far as if they were able to handle the field rentals. That's a big problem. That's 7 days a week, pretty much. So they'd be able to handle the field rentals. And then number two is if they took on the responsibilities of maintaining the grounds, that's a possibility as well. And Michael and I have been talking a lot about this lately. We don't have a problem with cutting the grass or weed whacking or whatever, or cleaning up the fields in the spring or in the fall. That's not a problem. The issues are when you're dealing with litter and you're dealing with trash and you're dealing with school events and that really gets for the DPW staff to all of a sudden get thrown into that world. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's very frustrating for these guys. And I'm just afraid I'm going to start losing people.
It's been an issue for a couple of years.
Yeah, for a long time. But it's the booking. That's the big thing is somehow it just destroys all the good we're doing over there. Whenever there's an issue with a rental or whatever, we're used to dealing with essential services, not recreational type things. So when all of a sudden you hit Friday and it's over a field rental, you just pull your hair out, you know, and it's just, yeah, it destroys the whole weekend, right? Because a light didn't go on, or a field light, or because it's overcast and it got darker sooner than they thought, you know, and everybody's freaking out trying to get the light on, you know, and yeah, so anyways. Yeah.
Well, I will say, my wife is a field coordinator for one of the local sport leagues, and she deals with Patty.
Yep.
And Patty's great, by the way.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be good. I mean, I feel like, well, number one, if, you know, you're not in the business of, you know, billing for those fields and things like that. Billing seems to come late and things like that.
Yep.
And I mean, especially if we move where we get more recreational fields, you know what I mean, potentially, that, you know, it'd be a good thing to kind of have, you know, or manage that revenue better, right? You know what I
Right.
mean? And have someone to kind of be that point person for scheduling and things like that, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think overall the field program is, I mean, we've just got to take a look at it. I'm not necessarily sure if the Parks and Rec Department is the right answer. It's one that we need to consider, but as Doug pointed out, you know, we're one of the few communities that actually handle booking and maintenance and the trash and everything for the school fields as well. And the way our field program is set up, it really, a lot of deference is made to the school athletic teams and everything, and it kind of puts us on a little bit behind the eight ball, because we have situations according to our policies where you could be like a youth sports league, and you could have a Saturday at 10 a.m. planned for your, you know, for your game, and at 9 o'clock, a school team might need to use that field, and you could literally bump that youth league. So you know, we just have to look at it just holistically. I'm not necessarily sure if a Parks and Rec Department makes sense at this point in time, or is it just that we split things up? You know, have the school department manage and take care of the school fields, including booking and things like that, and we take care of like Grinsell, Stone Park, and the community center. There's a couple of different ways to skin a cat, but I mean, I like the idea of a Parks and Recreation Department, not just because of the fields, but because of other things that it could potentially do. But that's, you know, that's a lot. I think Doug had put in you had 250? Yeah. So I'm sure Doug would not like it if I said, okay, we'll create one. I'm going to take $250,000 from DPW budgets. Or would you like it? Yeah, I didn't. Yeah, probably not. So, you know, obviously it's.
Do you know how the surrounding towns handle field rentals and things like that? I mean, I'm familiar with just going to Medway and using their complexes, you know, behind their, I guess, their high school.
Yeah.
Do you know how they handle it? Is
Doug,
it?
do you have some insight?
Yeah, a little bit. So Hopkinton has their own Parks and Rec department that handles that. Southborough also has their people that handles the rentals. Hopkinton, they do rent the high school fields, but they also have the private, you know, the EMC parks, which is crazy. I mean, it's amazing compared to.
Yeah.
But yeah, and the same with Holliston. Framingham has a whole separate department. They're at least. Right. Yeah. So. But that's what I know. As far, I mean, I think, you know, they probably have 2 or 3 full-time employees over in Hopkinton. Yeah. At least 3, I think. But
2 in Sudbury.
2 in Sudbury. Yeah. It's just Ashland is just we're unique. Yeah, and we always try to do things in-house and the hard way, and then after a while it's on the cheap, I guess. Then after a while, it's like, how do we need to get to that place where we can provide these services, and we need to be able to provide great fields with great services and all this stuff, and we're fighting real hard to do that right now, really hard, real hard. So, It's taking a toll on a lot of people right now.
I'm sure we can have a whole meeting on
Right.
fields.
Yeah, we actually probably should, quite frankly, at some point. But Doug started going into it, and we've talked about it with the police department and a little bit with the library and a little bit with fire. But, we're having a problem retaining and recruiting staff all across the board. And that's for a number of different reasons, but a lot of it's due to wages. And it has this snowball effect whereby so what happens is a person leaves, and not only do we have to spend time filling that position, but then the other staff members, the other employees have to pick up that slack. And if you have an extended length of time whereby you cannot hire a new employee because your wages are so low, then you really start imposing on the other employees' quality of life and their morale. And the police department's been, so many of those officers have been forced overtimes so many times. I don't know if they see the light at the end of the tunnel. I think they just. And it's demoralizing. It's tough to maintain any type of healthy balance in your life. And Doug, I don't know if Doug really mentioned it, but with some of our DPW employees, like we have a situation where a lot of times they will leave and go to either another town or to the private sector just because of the wages. It happens throughout the rest of our departments as well. Currently in recreation and over at the community center, we have 2 jobs that we've made. Well, one, we've made offers to 2 people. I'm thinking about recreation. Yeah. So, yeah, made offers to 2 people and 1 person didn't show up, and obviously the 2 didn't take the job. But the reason I bring this up is I know Jen and Scott, when we talked about this a couple Fridays ago, you had requested Catherine here to maybe speak a little bit about some of those challenges in a little more detail. I don't know if you still want to do that, but Catherine's certainly available.
Yeah, I had requested that. I don't have a list of, I wasn't sure it was gonna happen tonight. I don't have the list of questions, but given you're here, that makes sense. It's relevant to, I think, all the presentations so far.
Could I ask a quick question that might be more for you before we get into that? I'm just, partly for myself, but people who are listening who might think, okay, why is this an issue? Why are we not paying enough? Why are salaries so low compared to other places? Like, if you could just give a simple, I think I know the answer, but if you could give a simple kind of explanation of why we struggle with that so much in this town compared to other towns. You can do the per capita spending.
Well, there's this, and yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that's what I wanted to get to, is that our property tax rates are not keeping up with
Yeah,
expenses.
It all comes
So be clear
down.
of that line of where, revenues and expenses and how that compares. So if someone's listening or watching, they can understand kind of how that all flows through and why these are the impacts.
Yeah, so I would answer that a couple different ways. So the first metric that I go to look at that is expenditures per capita. Because you can make up revenue from a number of different ways, and some communities get more state aid and less on property taxes and all of that. But if you really want to go and see a measure of your efficiency and your effectiveness, is you look at expenditures per capita, you look at what we're able to provide. And I think anybody with an objective viewpoint who does a little bit of research shows that we're the best value in Metro West, the best bang for your buck. This includes schools as well, but if you look at the school's expenditure per capita, it's always on the low end of the spectrum. And we're quickly running out of ways to rationalize this, quite frankly. Before it was like, oh, it didn't include enterprise funds or so. Well, now we've got enterprise funds in there. And still, nothing's changing. So again, we're not going to get to the place where we need to be as long as we're still proud and happy and satisfied with a number like that.
And is that what you think the pressure is, that people are happy and proud that that number's low?
So that's
What are the forces that are making it and keeping it so low?
well,
That's what I'm
it's
trying to get at.
a lot of it goes to taxes.
Yep.
Okay, and so when I saw our 2023 single-family tax bill, average tax bill, and it had crested $8,000, I was like, that's a lot. But then you look at it compared to where we were years ago, we're just falling further and further behind, and it's a tough one because $8,200. If you're on Social Security and you're bringing in $24,000 or $30,000 a year, that's a lot of money. $7,100 is a lot of money, but that's a lot of money. So there are real impacts here, and real issues of affordability. But as Ashland's per capita income has continued to rise over the years, the ability to pay more in taxes should be commensurate with that, I think. I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation. Part of my job, part of Brittany's job, I guess part of our jobs collectively is to see how we can lessen the impact for those that are less fortunate than us, and those who don't necessarily have many options. So I think taxes are it. And if you just look at it compared to where it was 10 or 15 years ago, it's going to seem like it's gone up a lot, which it has, based on, your frame of reference and your point of view. But, like I said, it's just really hard. I don't think data gives you all the right answers, but I do think it helps you ask the right questions. But at the end of the day, I just don't know how you escape some of the facts that these are telling you.
Maybe just a thought here, and this is me personally, not speaking for the committee, but it seems like those challenges are going to get exponentially greater in future years. We're talking about 24 right now, right? Fiscal 24. But let's move on from that, right? We've adopted a strategy of kind of low to no growth, right? And I think in previous years, we're obviously limited to the 2.5% levy,
right,
plus new growth. And we've had a bunch of new growth in previous years, and I think that new growth has covered any holes on the expense side, right? Or enabled us to do certain things on the expense side. You start decreasing that, you're almost now just limited to 2.5%. And we all know that, the economy is growing at more than 2.5%. The spending is growing at more than 2.5%. So at some point, there's going to have to be some tough decisions, and there's as a community member, you start taking away some big things because of that. Then you say, what are we doing here?
Exactly. We're victims of our own success in some ways, in that we do a lot with what we have comparatively. I don't even think the city of Framingham has the amount of capital projects going on that we do. That's not me using hyperbole. If you look at municipal projects, if you look at some of the private development stuff that's going on, and I think what we get is a lot. But I tell you, there is a cost for that, and it's really been borne by our employees. They're really, really struggling. I'm tough on them. The expectations of the community is tough on me, but there's just a breaking point, and somebody just kind of maybe opens up a little bit more for Catherine to enter the conversation. But when you have good employees, they work at a job not just because of the money, right? There's other things that go into that. The culture, money's important. You can't be on the bottom end of the scale. but there's culture, there's feeling like you're making a difference and making an impact. But I'll tell you, for high achievers, I don't even know if it's high achievers, just people who want to do a good job. What's really, really, really demoralizing is when you're doing so many things, you can't do any of them well. And you know that you're going into work every day and you know you're not able to give your best effort on something because you're getting pulled in so many different directions. That is where it starts wearing on you. Wears on me. So I know it wears on them. They're the ones who are out in the field doing the work every day. But yeah, Scott, to your point, it's going to get the people. Over time, people have relied more and more on government to provide services to take care of social issues, infrastructure issues. 100 years ago, we weren't talking about social services or talking about mental health or talking about, athletic fields and maintaining them. A lot of that just wasn't on municipal government's radar screen. And over the years, I think as these issues have become a little bit more pronounced or have evolved, government has been looked to solve the problem, especially local government. But Catherine can probably give you just a more eloquent way of discussing some of the issues that we have. How was that for a setup?
Yeah.
So.
So I don't want to repeat too much. Michael said a lot of what I was going to say, but so for me, I started here about 4 months ago. And in that time, I've met with a lot of department heads and employees to get to know them. And some common themes that I've noticed, not only from the recruitment side, but from the employees that are here to the employees leaving. I've heard of burnout, work-life balance. Obviously, pay has been an issue. And so what I've done, and I've talked to Michael about this a lot, is sort of focus on a strategy of, how can we do better with recruitment? How can we do better with retention? And so part of that was looking at wages. And so that's something that we've done. And we've started with one group at a time just because it's extremely time consuming. We want to look at the wages. We want to look at them fairly, compare apples to apples, because all towns do things differently. And so that's what we've focused on, and we've started talking to people. And we have noticed some significant differences in wages, because that's largely been one of the biggest topics in talking to, not only candidates that we want to hire, but people that are here that we want to keep and retain, but also the people going out and leaving. So just talking about the PD, we talked about them. I told you how far off we were in those beginning stages. We've started looking at the clerical union, and they're probably like $4 to $5 off just in their starting wages. So when we talked about the recreation admin assistant position, we're allowed to start them at step 3, which is $19.76 per hour, I believe. And that step 3 is about $4 off of the surrounding towns, the rings that we talked about. They're step 1. So that's a significant difference. And so what we're finding is that we're having a hard time bringing people in. And then Michael also touched on how lean Ashland runs. So I can tell you, I come from another town. Ashland offers a ton of services that other towns just simply don't offer. So just thinking of community services and what they offer there, I know that that's not offered in a lot of other towns. And when people do leave, that's when we start to see that mental burnout. So what happens is that the employees that are here have to pick up the slack, but then we also have a difficult time recruiting. And then when we do go and recruit and find a candidate, that's great. However, there's a learning curve. So I would say for each new employee, you do have to do one full cycle. So what I mean by that is one fiscal year to really understand how a municipality works. I came from the private sector, and I can tell you HR in the private sector is very different than the public sector. So it took me a full fiscal year to grasp how this works. So what that does is that also puts a strain on our staff, which is not a bad thing. We want people to come here. We want people to like working in a municipality as much as we all do. It's a community unlike no other, and I love it. Maybe I'm biased, I don't know, but I really love it. So with that being said, does anyone have any questions for me? I know I've only been here a few short months, but these are some of the things that I've seen and heard.
I just have one comment. It's sticking in my mind. I think that I'm bothered by the fact that the police department doesn't at least get wages that are on the area average, you know? I mean, there's something wrong there. It's just my feeling.
Right.
And,
Do you want to? So in my experience with union negotiations, typically a contract's done every 3 years. And what communities do at times when they find that they're falling below the market, they'll do an adjustment to bring them back up. And I'm not sure, I have only been here for 4 months, I'm not sure the last time that we've sort of gotten into that.
Yeah, I don't think we've made like any wholesale adjustments outside of contract negotiations. Whatever, you know, your standard holds.
Where are we in the police contract? Or there's probably multiple, right?
Yeah, so there's 1 year left.
Okay.
Yeah. 2 years?
Only 1 year in.
We'll start negotiating next year for the next.
Sorry.
Well, actually, I should point out, you know, with the police department, given the situation that we're in, we're actually having conversations with them about trying to address some of the issues keeping us from hiring and retaining people right now. Like, we can't wait another contract cycle. And that includes looking at things like compensation and then also civil service. So, you know, those conversations are ongoing. But again, I'm limited by what I have to work with. So.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? No? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we only have one more part, if you want to go through it.
One more what?
One more part.
Go ahead.
Which is just looking at all the other budget line items, every single other line item. Just joking. Maybe I'm not. It does say other departments right here. Right, Britt? Okay, but no, we'll just give you the high-level overview of this. So again, these consist of the requests that we've put in. So under town manager, so we've got money in there for salary adjustments, and then also a significant amount of money in there for contracted services. Contracted services in the town manager's budget has always been the catch-all for things that weren't thought about when we were doing the budget, but come up in the year. Data processing, Paul Carpenter, our IT director, is requesting one full-time position. He also has some contracted items like software licenses and things like that he has to pay for out of his budget. Human resources, that accounts for the new wages that we have with the new director, and then also 2 positions that we have in there have switched and they've become human resources generalists. And then we also have more money in there for recruiting budgets because of how much hiring we have to put in. It's like 10,000, is that what it is? 8? Yeah, somewhere around there. Oh wow, look, I just did all this. Okay, well, hey. Town accountant, so we have money in there in that budget, and that includes a salary adjustment in there, and then it also includes the audit. Right, so the external audit that we do each year. Assessor's office, what's primarily driving that is every 5 years we have to do a revaluation of property. And so that's usually done through a consultant, and so this funding includes that. Oh, maybe I'll pick up the pattern here. So okay, all right. Maybe this is a test, just a, you know. So the Conservation Commission, so that money includes funding for a part-time agent, which is important because, so Doug has some money put in his budget for a tree warden. So Doug's idea of who would be a great tree warden would be our conservation agent. She actually would be incredible. But to do that work, she needs some help to help backfill the work that she currently does. Planning board, we have money in there for another assistant planner. So the amount of applications that we get for development has been significant. We do have the moratorium on, but you know, that's going to be a 2-year period, so eventually that will go away. And there's just a lot that's asked of the planning department for things like special projects. We're going through a comprehensive plan right now, which is taking already a significant amount of time, and we haven't even got a steering committee formed yet, and we haven't even really started the meetings. Inspectional services. Doug Scott, who was our building commissioner, last year we had put in the budget a position for capital projects. And if you recall, but we haven't been able to fill that, not because of anything other than we don't have space. That's another issue that we're dealing with. We store a lot of stuff here, and I think we've got a solution for that we can enact over the year. But Doug also has an extensive project management background. He could be a certified OPM. He's working on the Valentine project for us now. So this money, a lot of it goes to an assistant building inspector. So we only have Doug right now, who is our building commissioner, and a building inspector. So this money would allow him to take more on for that project management role, but then have somebody to help assist with the building inspections. Tess, did I get that? Oh, and design costs for various projects. So that's another thing that pops up that we don't really talk about a lot, is that things happen in relation to our infrastructure that we don't account for during the year. The newest example is up on the roof here in Town Hall. The roof is actually on one side, it's actually separating from the top plate. And it turns out what happened is when they did the renovation here and they planned for it, they didn't account for the weight of the HVAC equipment upstairs, and then also like the new insulation that was part of it. So that's what's caused that separation. So you've got to design a fix for that, and you have to put that in, and obviously that needs to be done sooner rather than later. All right, Health Department. So the Health Department is seeking funding to increase the nursing hours that we currently have. That's like at 5 hours a week to, I believe it's 20 hours a week. I'm gonna need some help on this one. So additional nursing hours. So human services, so it's going up for $100K. So that includes an assistant recreation director, increase in hours for the activity and volunteer coordinator. We could definitely use those hours, but we're hoping that increase in hours makes the job a little bit more attractive for people. I mean, that job's been open for 6 months. November? When did Candy start? Anyway, it's been months. It's been a while. And then also our DFC grant, which funds a lot of our substance abuse prevention services, is going away. Okay, excluded debt. Now, this is a big number. So that's projected to go up 1.4 million. Obviously, that's for public safety building and the Mendez School. Non-excluded debt is projected to go down to 252, or by 252. And Brittany, that includes, so that 3.1 million includes $150,000 for new authorizations, new borrowing authorizations. So if we took that out, you'd be looking at a $400,000 decrease. Yep, Michael, you got that one right. Okay. And then looking at benefits, so employee retirement, that's projected to go up almost 5%. Group health insurance is projected to go up $350,000 or almost 5%. Other insurance is predicted to go up 8.7%. And then salary contingency. So we've talked a lot about salaries, and we've talked about where they rank compared to other communities. So what I've asked Brittany to do is factor in essentially salary increases across the board. I mean, that's how we got the number, but the idea is that we start addressing some of these pay inequities with not just like our department heads and non-union personnel, but also our union personnel as well, to start addressing some of these issues. And even though the contracts are not up until June 30th of 2024, I'd like to go ahead and try to start fixing those right now, just because of we're reaching a critical point.
Michael,
yeah,
maybe staying on the salary contingency for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, that $500,000 that's proposed right now, is that targeted? Is that across the board, or have you, is there thought behind kind of where that goes?
Not a whole lot of thought yet. So basically, we took the employee payroll and increased it by a percentage. Can't tell you the exact percentage yet, but it's between 1 and 10. You can probably guess. Mm-hmm. And basically using that as kind of a baseline. So any questions with regards to these other items?
If I can just add, there's some that you went through really quickly, and I felt like when Scott and I came and listened to all the presentations, that there are significantly more on that list of people who do so much with so little. Data processing being one.
Yeah.
I remember sort of being blown away by the numbers of devices and programs, and they haven't increased their number of people in 10 years. I don't know.
Right.
The same story we hear all the time. Kelly, rec department, sort of what she's trying to do but can't. Sort of, I just felt like the story was consistent among all those presentations and the related requests for additional staffing.
Yeah, and I think, in hindsight, we should have probably recorded the budget meeting that we did, minus a few of my comments. But you're right, Jen. I think the difference is this year, what I've asked the department heads to do is do a lot of research, comparative research with other communities. And so now we have actual data. I mean, I've always known in my head, we've always known that what we provide is in terms of value is second to none. Mm-hmm. But now we actually have data that can talk about that. So when you talk about Paul and his IT department, a lot of people don't realize that, prior to 2016, we had 5 IT employees in the school department and 1 employee in the municipal side. In 2016, when that person on the municipal side left, we consolidated, didn't add any more positions. So now Paul and his team are taking over everybody. So they support both the town and the schools. And as you know, like especially over the pandemic, everybody has a Chromebook now. And we just haven't necessarily put money into the human side of things. I mean, we've bought a lot of computers, right? But those are more devices that you need to keep track of. You have to image, you have to maintain. So it's, you know, we've lacked on that side over the years. But Jen, I agree. They could, each department head could come up here and dollar for dollar give you a justification as to what they're asking for. And it's logical, and it makes sense, and it's certainly not excessive.
Anything else from the committee? I mean, the next steps, right? Right, you have a $1.7 million hole that you gotta fill somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I know you're gonna work through that, and, you know, I think you said that state aid just came in, so now at least we know what we're kind of dealing with, so.
Yeah, we got a much better sense of what we're dealing with, and that is good. It's much better than what was expected. Again, that number was 3.1, 3.2 just a few days ago. And so, like you said, Scott, the next steps are the school department is going to be meeting this weekend with the school committee, and they will start determining what their final number is going to be, or what their ask is going to be. Like I said, I suspect, given the state, the Chapter 70 number, that their request is going to go up a little bit. Again, totally justifiable and not excessive by any means. So that will happen on March 4th. We do have a tri-board meeting scheduled for the following Wednesday. And I'm hoping we'll have a little bit more of a plan on how to address this deficit. And it's going to probably take a number of different forms, a number of different tools that we'll have to use. I will say one of the things that we might look at doing is changing our policy for using the Special Education Stabilization Fund. Right now, it's very, very limited in how we use it, and money has just kind of sat there for a while. So we might come to you with a presentation and a request to modify that to make it a little bit more flexible, which could provide some relief. I don't think the budgets that have been presented are going to make it through into the final budget. I don't think everything's gonna happen there. But you know, we're required to do it. I'm not requesting an override this year. But I do think it's important when we start having this conversation about what the community expects from a service standpoint and what we're willing to provide.
So how does this compare, like where we are in the process right now, like this 1.7 deficit? Like in other years, are you kind of always at a large deficit at this rate and then you work towards it? Or kind of how does this compare to other years where you've been at?
So in other years, it's never really been like this, but that's because at the front end, I've basically said, hey folks, you know, keep it, don't be, you know, we've got a finite budget, we got limited resources, be judicious with what you have, with what you request. So we usually don't have, you know, a huge gap like this, but we can't do that anymore. Like, and it's a struggle because I tell you, a lot of these department heads have been so used to doing less with doing more with less, and also making sure that what they do have doesn't get cut. That mindset is still pervasive in a lot of them. So I'm not necessarily sure what is requested here is truly what we need to be the community that we say we want to be. But that being said, it's a lot more representative this year of what we need than it has been in prior years.
Yeah, and I'll add, I mean, usually we're sitting here getting a budget, and then we're asking a question, you know, like, Chief, now tell us what you really need.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So I think it's refreshing just to see, okay, here's what I really need, and there's the number, right? And this is kind of, you know, there's the gap in revenue and expense. Right. Instead of kind of, it's all on paper, instead of having to ask the question. So,
right.
You know, for one, I like, it's good to see from everyone, that kind of approach, in my opinion.
I agree. I think we've kind of enabled, or I should say I have kind of enabled some of that before, just because I'm a problem solver by nature, and that's okay. Well, got to fix the problem. But now the problem of limited revenue has been exceeded by the problem of staff turnover and burnout.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, this has been great. Thank you to all the department heads who presented today.
Thank you.
Doug, you get a little bit of rest before the storm comes.
Doug doesn't sleep. I get emails from Doug at like 1 a.m., and they're usually at novels.
You're doing better with the scheduled send, right?
You did learn my advice. Take my advice on that. I say that. Sorry, I just have to brag about our employees again. I mean, they don't stop working. They really don't. I mean, I get texts in the middle of the night. Late at night, emails show up. At 2 a.m. Maybe Doug schedules. That's true. I mean, I respond usually, but or try to get everything back. But that's that's expected of me. That's not a normal expectation of department heads. So, sorry.
All right. I don't have any other business. Anyone else have anything you want to bring up? So I think just as far as future meetings, we have the tri-board meeting on March 5th, is it?
March 8th.
8th. Let me just make sure I have
March 5th is a Sunday.
Okay, so definitely
I'm
not
not a
that
pious
day.
person, but,
The 8th at 6.
8th at 6th. Okay. That's the wrong calendar.
okay.
That's the work calendar. There we go, I got it. So 8th at 6. And where is that?
We're going to do that downstairs.
In AB, okay.
AB, yeah,
All right.
to hold everybody.
And then I guess from there, when would we be needed, or I'll just maybe wait to hear from Brittany as far as potential future meetings?
Yeah.
Other warrant items, because we still have to meet with Jim
You still got to meet with Jim and John Evans.
and John Evans. And then I think I saw a request from Aaron. Is that
Yeah, CPC.
CPC for some warrant articles?
Yep.
I don't know where they are with theirs.
And then, at least go through the enterprise funds.
Yep.
In a little bit more detail.
Within, when you get to a complete budget document and all
Right.
that, yeah.
Yep.
So we have the 8th, and I guess maybe I'll wait to hear when you might be ready for the next one, or Jim might be ready to meet.
Okay.
And we can schedule that further.
Well, thank you so much for having us here, inviting us here, and listening to us, and asking some real thought-provoking questions.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
All right. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Second by Jen. All in favor? Aye. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.